In Insight today, Google Prize remains untouched.
Device keeps liver alive outside of the body in a medical first.
And converted iPhone microscope discovers worm infections.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another edition of Insight. We're going to start with a brand new all-in-one PC tablet called the Transformer AIO. Now, Colleen, this is made by Asus, and basically they're branding this as quite similar to the iMac that we have already. So if you think of like an all-in-one machine, but the difference with this is you can actually physically take the screen off and it becomes a tablet that you can walk around with. Now it runs Windows 8 and Android, so basically when it's docked in, you can use it like a normal Windows 8 machine, but also it gives you the extra option of being able to take the screen off and using it as an Android tablet.
Quite a novel idea. I mean, a combination of both a PC and a tablet. But how big is it? I mean, is it something that's going to be very portable?
Well, that's the main thing. At the moment, the actual tablet is 18 inches, which is quite big physically, and also it weighs 5 pounds, which is almost double what most other tablets weigh. So it's not one of those things that you could just take on the train down with you or take to work or out the house. You know,
this is hide it in your pocket or anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not really you know the most portable of tablets, but it does show an interesting trend in how they're developing PCs nowadays. It's not just a solid chunk of metal that you put on your desk. It's something that is a bit more portable. So it'll be interesting to see if this really takes off. But obviously the weight and the portability factor will be a main issue with this, to see if it becomes quite popular.
So Ghalib, tell us about the price. Is it something that's very affordable for an average home?
Well, at the moment it's marketing at $1,300. Which works out to about £1,000 over here in the UK. So it's something that is at the top end. You can easily pick up a machine, an all-in-one machine, for about £700–800. So it's a little bit pricier. Obviously, it has got this additional feature, but obviously it's something that as technology comes out, the prices do drop down. They do become a bit more affordable. And what we're really hoping for is that something like this is they're able to produce a product which is a bit lighter, a bit more portable. But the idea is good. It's an interesting step forward. So hopefully the next few models will be an improvement on this.
So we could see a whole range of new devices coming through, lighter, better, different companies, and a whole new product coming our way.
Yeah, and the name gives it away. They're calling it the Transformer. So it's obviously something that can transform to your needs, and that's where technology is going now. It's becoming a lot more flexible and can adapt around us. So we'll have to wait and find out to see how this Asus actually gets on.
So Ghalib, Google's very commonly known for its own search engine, but it also operates operating systems. And they've got a fantastic system where they create their own problems. They invite a whole range of hackers to come and check to see whether they can break into their operating system. So the operating system that we're talking about is the Chrome operating system. And what they've basically done is they made a prize of $3 million to any individual who was able to hack into their system.
So let me get this right. If I was a hacker, I would go to a Google event and try and hack into their own operating system, and they'd pay me $3 million.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, it sounds bizarre, but it's a fantastic way of double checking, because they can actually hit the problems there and correct them there at the same time. Okay. So then you end up with a better product. At the same time, they were testing other browsers as well, including Safari, etc. And they did have problems there, but no flaws were found with their own Chrome system. So it's actually quite good news for themselves.
So did anyone actually get the prize money then, or was it just left in there?
No problems found. Money all kept in their own pockets.
So Google must be happy at the end of the day.
Yeah, they're happy, and they can then market the fact that they've actually got a good product which has been tried and tested by some of the world's best hackers, if you want to call them best. And so they've got a brilliant product.
So it's quite an interesting concept that actually they could turn to hackers to help them. So obviously anyone watching at home, instead of going down the hacking route, there is another way. If you find that you really enjoy going through code and finding potential problems, there is an actual way of, an actual almost career path, you can maybe call it, where you could actually help these companies in developing safer software. And, at the end of it, you can be paid as well.
$3 million.
Yeah, it's quite a lot.
Now, we normally think of a helicopter and an aircraft as two completely different things. But now a European company called Augusta Westland have actually made something completely novel. And this is a combination of the two.
Right, okay, how does it work?
Basically, it's a small, lightweight aircraft which has rotating propellers. And so hence, it can actually take off vertically, and then the turbines change, direction, and it can fly just as an aircraft does.
So this is a European company that's developed this, and not only is it a revolutionary aircraft, but it's also fully electric, which means it'll have less impact on the environment. And talking about the environment, not only is it electric, but the fact that it can land and take off vertically will mean that we don't need to have huge airports, which by themselves have a huge impact on the environment. They take up space and take up natural resources as well. So it's a really interesting move in terms of
And there's also parts of the world like the Amazon or somewhere difficult that people need to get to, and hence they can actually get there with an aircraft and be able to land in a small area, because a takeoff and landing pitch is actually quite big.
Exactly. And not only that, but the developers are saying it actually offers greater speed and range than with conventional aircrafts.
So at the moment it's a lightweight aircraft, so we have to see how things develop. At the moment it's only about a 2 or 3 seater aircraft, so perhaps in the future, if it goes well, they have done several flights already. If they're successful, they could start to increase the size, and you never know, you could be seated in one soon.
It might be the end of bumpy takeoffs and bumpy landings at airplanes.
Yep, straight up.
So let's turn to some science news now, and scientists at Oxford University have developed a robot car. Now, Colleen, this is one of those things that could really take the pain out of driving, because basically using a system of cameras and lasers, they've actually mounted the technology onto the car, and the car can actually drive itself.
So for all of you who want to avoid driving, have a close look at this.
It sounds like a scene out of a sci-fi movie, cars that drive themselves, interacting with other road users and using roads safely and efficiently. But actually it may be closer to reality than we think if scientists at the University of Oxford have their way. They have developed Robot Car, a modified Nissan Leaf which includes lasers, cameras, a computer to perform all the calculations needed to plan, control speed and avoid obstacles on the road. Developers say it is hard to tell this car apart from any other vehicle on the road. Lasers tucked under the front and rear bumpers of the vehicle allow the system to sense the 3D structure of the car's environment to help figure out the car's location and orientation on the road. Robot Car's creators are ensuring safety with 3 computers on board, including an iPad. The computers help constantly monitor the road ahead to look out for pedestrians, cars or anything that can pose a danger. If an obstacle is detected, the vehicle comes to a stop and waits until the obstacle moves away. The car is also programmed to take over if there is any problem when the car is being driven by a human. The aim for robots to make autonomous decisions based on the information they have, which includes prior knowledge of the area through aerial images and road plans, as well as prior experience and training. The Nissan Leaf itself is one of the world's leading all-electric vehicles, meaning there is no carbon emissions and high efficiency. The robot car is plugged into the mains to replenish its battery's charge rather than filling up with petrol. Developers say the robot car is the answer to congestion and road accidents. They are hoping to extend the reach robot navigation to vast scales without the need for expensive, awkward and inconvenient modifications. They estimate that refitting the Nissan Leaf has only cost about £5,000.
If this takes off, it could actually be quite amazing. Imagine all those journeys you could do, not cruise control, the whole thing's taken care of.
Yeah, no, it's quite interesting. But having said that, how many times have you wanted to go for a drive for the enjoyment of driving? You know, it's one of those things where technology is taking that enjoyment out of it. But the plus side is, obviously, you know, it could help prevent a lot of road deaths and accidents. So that is definitely the motivation behind this.
But then there is the fact that you are in control when you are driving yourself, and how much can you trust a robot or a computer?
Exactly, it always comes down to that. There's always going to be people who would not want to put their full trust into letting a computer drive, you know, potentially at speeds of 60, 70 miles an hour on a motorway.
But we do in the air anyway. You have autopilot when you're travelling abroad on an aircraft. So if it's on air, why not down on the ground?
Because there's traffic, you know, and there's other people, there's cyclists and all the rest of it. But, you know, we'll see how it develops. So we might be looking at a future of robots driving our cars for us.
So Ghalib, there are some organs that Allah's blessed us with, including the heart, the brain and also the liver, that we only have one of. And if there's any kind of damage to that organ, you're on life's edge. Right. Now the liver is a particular organ that needs to be transplanted sometimes because of problems like fatal hepatitis or cirrhosis, and then a transplant becomes necessary. But the problem with that transplant can be that during the process of transplantation, the liver itself can be damaged.
Okay.
What's basically happened at the moment is a new technique has been devised where the liver doesn't have to be cooled down and it can be kept at the same body temperature and kept pumping and alive, which is a fantastic way of preventing that liver being damaged in the transplantation process.
So this is not inside the human body, this is external?
This is external. So normally what happened was that the liver was taken out and then cooled down.
Right.
And during that time, there was a lot of problems taking place with the process, and a lot of livers were actually lost in that. Now, livers are really, really important for us.
Yeah,
and also there's very few people that are donating at the moment. So every liver was very special. The problem that was happening is that even people who were donating their livers,
Yeah.
that process was allowing livers to be lost. Now what's happening is that these livers are being saved, and if this process becomes widespread, we can save so many more lives by effective transplantation.
No, that's really important, especially as Kaleem's just mentioned there. There's almost 13,000 liver transplants that happen in the US and Europe alone. So something like this can really help in making sure that we can help a lot more people. And it's potentially, you know, another way, another example of how technology is being used to actually preserve human life. So have you ever got mixed up between an LCD and an LED TV? Or maybe you're struggling with the whole concept of Wi-Fi? Well, to help with these technical terms, here at Insight we've developed a brand new segment called What Is? And on today's show, we're going to be having a look at DNA. So here's Ismail Chaudhry for his What Is DNA section.
So we've all heard the term DNA, but what is it? To start off with, I'm going to explain what cells are. Cells are the building blocks of all the organisms on the planet. And within the cell, there's a part known as the nucleus. The nucleus is a control center of the cell. And this is where DNA is found, packaged as a substance known as chromosomes. In humans, we have 46 chromosomes in every cell. In fact, we have so much DNA in these chromosomes that if we were to unwind the DNA in every single one of our chromosomes in the body, we'd be able to get to the moon and back 6,000 times. That's a lot of DNA, but why do we need it? Our DNA contains genes. Genes code for how we're made and our characteristics. They code for our hair colour, our eye colour, and whether we're human or, for example, a banana. In fact, we share 50% of our genetic makeup with a banana. So how do genes control what we look like, and why do we all look different? Well, we inherit our genes from our parents, and you'll inherit certain genes, for example, the gene for your eye colour from your mother, and the gene for your hair colour from your father. And this is why we look different, and it's known as variation. However, identical twins have exactly the same genes. So the next time anybody mentions DNA to you or brings it up in a topic, you'll know exactly what it is.
So now you know a little bit more about DNA, let's talk about telomeres. Now, telomeres are the ends of chromosomes, and as we've said before, chromosomes are found in every cell of the body.
Right.
At the end of the chromosome, you have a little part which is called a telomere, and that protects the chromosome. Now, research has been done recently on these telomeres, and it's been found in a group of heart patients that if the length of the telomere is shorter, they have a prediction that the person is not going to survive as long. So the length of the telomere may give us an idea on the length of one person's life.
Now, is this something that's defined throughout someone's life, or does actual length change over life? So potentially, would you be able to look at the DNA of someone quite young and be able to tell them how long they're going to live?
It's not an exact thing that the length of the telomere is going to give you the length of the person's life. It's their ability to withstand different types of diseases. And that's what they looked at with these people with heart problems. Certain people had certain lengths of telomeres, and then those people were more susceptible to have problems with their hearts, which then affected their survival.
Yeah, that's very interesting. But having said that, would you personally, would you want to know then how long the telomere is and potentially how that could affect you?
I think I would want to know, because if you knew that you had a high risk for certain problems,
Right.
you would then be able to take more preventative measures, hence enabling you, even with a shorter telomere, to have a better quality of life and not suffering from diseases which could affect your longevity.
So we've mentioned iPhones and smartphones in other episodes of the show, but actually they're not just fun devices, they have practical uses too, outside the scope of just using them as a phone. And rural scientists in Tanzania have actually used an iPhone as a microscope. Kaleem, so tell us a bit more.
So intestinal worms can be a huge problem, especially for children. They cause malnourishment and can severely affect a child's life because they're taking a little bit of food in, and that food is then taken up by those worms. So what's basically happened is someone's been able to use an iPhone and connect an $8 lens to this.
Right.
They use a basic torch. They take a stool sample, and then they can observe that stool sample on a basic slide, and then they can actually see if that stool sample has any worms.
Right, okay.
It's been so successful that they've been able to diagnose in 70% of cases very accurately if that child has worms, and then that child can get their appropriate treatment.
So instead of using, high-end microscopes, they're actually able to just use an average smartphone that maybe one of the scientists would even have themselves and attach this lens and, potentially able to find something that could really change.
Yeah, so it
someone's
means
life.
faster access to care, it means better treatment, it means faster treatment, and it also means that the cost can be reduced quite significantly for people in rural areas who may be suffering, whose kids may be suffering with these kind of problems.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we don't want anyone to have, and using technology like this, and like we said, all they did was add on a lens which just cost about $8, it's next
Very
to nothing.
affordable.
Very affordable, and it actually basically transformed the digital camera on the phone into a makeshift microscope that they were able to use out, in the field. So it's a fantastic use of technology, and hopefully it's something that we'll see more of in the future. Now, a couple of months ago, the scientists at CERN used the Hadron Collider to find what they called the Higgs boson, which is also known as the God particle. Now, even though they hadn't actually physically found it, they said that a lot of the data seems to point to the fact that it is there, and that was the breakthrough. But having said that, now, on March the 14th, physicists are actually declaring that there's practically little doubt that it doesn't exist. So they've got the most accurate data and the biggest possibility that it actually does exist. It's a major scientific breakthrough, and to find out more about it, we've got a special video report.
Physicists who last summer announced the discovery of a new particle, but held back from saying what it was, have now declared that there is little doubt that it was indeed the long-sought Higgs boson. Latest analysis of data from the Large Hadron Collider particle accelerator in Switzerland, where the boson was spotted as a bump on a graph early in 2012, strongly indicates it is Higgs. The European Organization for Nuclear Research, or CERN, made the announcement in mid-March. Physicists believe the boson and its linked energy field were vital in the formation of the universe 13.7 billion years ago, by bringing flying particles together to make stars, planets, and giving mass to matter in scientific jargon. It will be some years now before any new discoveries are found at the LHC, shut down last month for 2 years to allow its power and reach to be doubled. In the giant subterranean collider, which started up in March 2010, particles are smashed together hundreds of times a second at near the speed of light to simulate the Big Bang. The debris is then tracked on huge detectors. But the new particle turns up only once in every trillion collisions, leaving the thousands of physicists and analysts at CERN and in laboratories around the world the massive task of deciding what data to discard. The particle and the field, named for British physicist Peter Higgs, who predicted their existence 50 years ago, are also the last major missing elements in what scientists call the standard model of how the cosmos works at a very basic level. MD physicist Dr. Abdul Salam was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for his work on the standard model and predicting the existence of such a particle.
So the Higgs boson was actually predicted in the 1970s by Professor Abdul Salam Sab, and the reason why it's called the God's particle is simply because it gives us so much more information about the origins of the universe. So this could tell us a little bit more about creativity and the fact that God is the actual creator. So most of you may have heard of the Hubble telescope, but now an even better and bigger telescope is in Chile. Tell us a bit more.
Well, the thing that's special about Chile is that they've got the Atacama Desert, which is 5,000 feet above sea level. And what that means is it's much closer to the Earth's atmosphere, and because it's a desert as well, there's less precipitation and less cloud cover, so you get really amazing clear skies, which is obviously the perfect conditions that you need when you're building a telescope. So they've called it the Alma telescope, and it's going to be able to give almost 10 times sharper images than the Hubble telescope that you mentioned.
So this is not just one small thing, it's a big telescope which is spread over a 10-kilometer distance. 66 different antennas make up this telescope.
So it's going to be really amazing the amount of detail we're going to find in these pictures, and this telescope is going to be able to take photos of some of the darkest plots of our universe where galaxies and stars are formed. So it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of pictures we're going to be able to get from this Alma telescope, which is now being launched in Chile. So the Mars Curiosity rover, which is a robot that has been exploring the planet Mars, has found that an ancient Mars could have supported living microbes.
The basis of this has basically been the analysis of rock samples. What they've been doing is they've been drilling near a big crater, which is basically the Gale crater in Mars. And as a result of this, what they've done is they've analysed the rock and found which elements are there. Now, the building blocks of life are known to be amino acids, and various elements are needed to actually make an amino acid. Those include sulfur, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and hydrogen. And they've actually found all of these elements in the rock samples, which means that there is a chance that life could have existed because those necessary elements to make amino acids were present in those rock samples. Another thing that they're always looking for is water. So water and these amino acid elements are two things that scientists are constantly on the lookout for on different planets to see whether life exists or could exist on distant stars and planets.
Yep, and this discovery is the closest they've come to actually finding the possibility of life on Mars. Now, rover's going to carry on digging around and exploring, so it'll be interesting to see what new discoveries it does come up with, but we'll keep you abreast of all the information as soon as it comes out.
Now, comets pass near Earth all the time, but something special's happened recently. Let's tell us a bit more.
Now, the comet's called Pan-STARRS, and it passed within 160 million kilometers of the Earth, which sounds quite far, but relatively speaking, it's quite close. And it's actually the closest approach in its first pass through the solar system. Now, it was picked up by a telescope in Hawaii, and they actually spotted it first 2 years ago. Now, the interesting thing was this, is that they actually think that it originates from icy bodies beyond the orbit of Pluto and Neptune, which means that, it's millions and millions of miles away that it's come from. So, it's not something that could potentially have harmed the Earth, but who knows, in its second path, it might be a bit closer and it might be something we need to look out for.
Yeah, comets are something that we're always constantly looking out for because they could strike at any time, and a comet hitting Earth could be a big thing. It could be the end of the planet as well. But what they tell us is what's actually happening in the galaxy around us, and also they can tell us a little bit more about the origins of life. This comet in particular is thought to be billions of years old. So this kind of stuff in terms of what's going on in the stars and what's actually happening tells us a bit more about the activity in space, and also allows us to make a few more predictions about what could happen as well.
Yep, definitely. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for in this episode of Insight, but inshallah, we'll be back in a couple of weeks with more technology news and reviews.
We hope you're enjoying our new Insight, and we want to hear what you think about the stories and products we've talked about today. Also, tell us what you'd like to see on this programme.
You can send us your comments and views to insight@MTA, and don't forget that you can also tweet us at InsightMTA.
Thanks for joining us, and Assalamu alaikum.